Haldeman says no one seemed to know who brought Hunt into the White House, but it's not that hard to figure out. Because not only did Hunt and Bush come to work for Nixon at exactly the same time, but no one in the White House had any connections to CIA operations. No one had any connections. While Bush, on the other hand, was directly involved in the same CIA operations in the same area at the same time that Hunt was. And there's more to this story. Nixon's chief of staff says that everyone was astonished and flabbergasted in 1970, the day that Nixon announced that he was bringing John Connally into the White House as his Secretary of Commerce. No one understood the connection between these two, one the leader of the Republican Party and the other the leading Texas Democrat. Haldeman says, however, that Connally insisted that before they could hire him, they first had to get a White House job for Bush. Why? What is their relationship? What does Bush have to say about it in his autobiography? Not a word, not one. If he and Connally ever spoke in their entire lives, Bush doesn't mention it. How can you possibly explain the connection between these people? Do these guys have anything in common? The answer is either no, they all came together in 1970 for no apparent reason, or the answer is this one: they all met on the same road to power. And there's more to the Nixon-Bush-Hunt connection than that they came together at the same time in the same place. Remember when Hunt was sitting in jail demanding that Nixon pay him $1 million in hush money or he'd start talking? Hunt got paid. The money came from this man, Bill Leitke, George Bush's oldest, closest, and most important business partner. Leitke helped Bush found Zapata Offshore. And then, in 1959, when the CIA needed the company, Leitke handed the company to Bush, made Bush the sole owner, so Bush could carry out secret operations without any outside observers getting in the way. The fact that Bush's closest business partner paid Hunt the $1 million is just one more connection between Hunt and Bush. But wait, there's more. Remember this man? Leitke's money actually went to him, Ramon Rodriguez. He was a CIA-trained money launderer working in a Mexican bank, and he wrote the actual checks that Hunt received.
I made payments for the Watergate burglars, yes.
12 years later, in 1984, he was working for the main Colombian drug cartel when Vice President Bush sent this man to ask him for $10 million to help pay for the illegal terrorist war Bush was waging against the people of Nicaragua.
Well, the only government mention that he made was Vice President Bush. The request for the contribution made a lot more sense because Felix was reporting to George Bush. Here you have a CIA guy reporting to the old boss.
Now, how did Bush know this guy? How did he know he had $10 million, and how did he know that he would pay it? It's a good question. Whatever the reason, the connection is still there. Bush is connected to him by this incident, and through him, Bush again is connected to Hunt. Two more connections between Bush and Hunt. It's starting to get ridiculous. Hunt's mother is not so thoroughly connected to Hunt. And now let's look at Bush's role in the cover-up. In 1975, the Senate Select Committee on Assassinations began to investigate the CIA's role in the Kennedy assassination. The committee uncovered the CIA internal memo that Spotlight magazine wrote about, which says that Hunt was in Dallas on the day of the assassination. William Colby was director of the CIA at the time.
Oh yeah, Hunt was there all right. He and Bush were in charge of the shooters.
And he was cooperating with the committee.
But they weren't really in charge. They were just taking orders.
And supplied the committee with the Hunt memo.
From civilians, like Allen Dulles and the Rockefellers. Maybe I
Colby
should shut
was
up
suddenly
now.
fired. And, out of the blue, supposedly with no CIA experience, George Bush Sr. was appointed to take over as head of CIA. Why? What qualified Bush for this job? One thing. Bush could be relied upon better than Colby to cover up the facts of JFK's murder because Bush knew that the trail led straight to him. He had to cover it up, and he did. He ended CIA cooperation with the committee and effectively shut down the investigation. The fact that Bush played this leading role in the cover-up connects him to every person threatened by this investigation. So, there's a ton of evidence that connects George Bush to John Kennedy's killers. But now we'll look at a couple of pieces of strange evidence that, while they don't connect Bush to the killers, do connect him to the assassination in ways that can only be described as weird. This is George de Mohrenschildt. He was a wealthy, Russian-born Texas oil man who liked to party with minimum-wage clerks. He helped get Oswald a job at the Dallas School Book Depository. Of course, he was CIA. The night before he was to be questioned by the Senate Committee on Assassinations, his head was blown off with a shotgun. In his pocket at the time was an address book, and in his address book was the entry, Bush, George H.W., Poppy, his family nickname, 1412 West Ohio, also Zapata Petroleum, Midland. By itself, this proves nothing. Taken in context, however, it is one more amazingly direct link between Bush and the assassination. But that's not all. FBI documents record that, on the day of the assassination, at 1:45 p.m., Mr. George H.W. Bush telephonically furnished the following: that he recalled hearing in recent weeks, the day and source unknown, that one James Parrott had been talking of killing the president when he comes to Houston. Now what the hell do you make of that? Just crazy. When questioned about the FBI documents, Bush says he does not recall making the phone call. His failure to recall such dramatic events puts him into a unique club. Like Nixon and Hunt, he can't seem to remember the events of November 22, 1963. It seems that this guy was everywhere, connected to every single aspect of the assassination, planning, execution, and cover-up. No one, not Hunt, not Connally, not Nixon, no one on the face of the earth could possibly have better credentials as a suspect than George Herbert Walker Bush. The scale in this case is tipped past a certain critical point. The probability that he was involved is genuinely beyond a reasonable doubt. The Hoover memo is not circumstantial evidence, it is direct eyewitness smoking gun evidence from the most influential figure in the history of American law enforcement. The rest of the evidence merely provides a context for this memo that makes it impossible to reasonably believe that the former president was not involved in the murder of John Kennedy. If we could present this evidence to an unbiased jury in Texas, they would certainly give him the death penalty. Ow, ooh, ooch, oh, ow, ooh, ow, oh, take it easy, fellas. Ow, ooh, ooch, oh, ow, ooh, ow, oh, take it easy, fellas. Oh, take it easy, fellas. Ow, ooh, ooch, oh. When I was just a little fool, my mama sent me off to a place called school. Liked the part about taking a nap, it seemed everything else was a load of crap. No fool. Taught us George Washington chopped down the cherry tree so we could all have freedom, justice, and liberty. Did I mention Columbus discovered America? Well, I went off to college, and believe it or not, the harder I studied, the dumber I got. Taught us we was all geniuses, folks back home was asses, and elites like us ought to rule the masses. Some schooling. Had to drop out, though. Just couldn't seem to get my shoulders inside my patootie. Got slapped in the face. No, it couldn't have been ruder, by a friend with a film by a guy named Zapruder. Showed Kennedy's brains getting blown out the back. Seems the Warren Commission was hooked on crack. And the FBI, and every newspaper and television and radio on God's green earth. Well, the day JFK got blown away, old George Bush was in the CIA, and though E. Howard Hunt might have held the gun, George Bush Sr. was surely the one who said, do it. Told him again during Watergate, do it. Sold that slogan to Nike. Well, 40 years later, I'm preaching away. Seems my head's still out in the light of day, but Kennedys are still dying, people are still crying, and the TV and the papers and the teachers still lying. Seems it's still pretty dark out in the middle of the day, even if your head ain't shoved 5 miles up your patoot. Well, what you gonna do? Seems I can't keep quiet, can't sit still, and I ain't gonna lie and sit back watching while the devils rule. Might have been once, but I ain't no fool. I'm gonna holler, hey, and I'm gonna beller, hey, and I'm gonna sing you a little song. Goes something like this.
Your name is Big Brother.
I know you're waiting for the CIA. They wouldn't have you in the mafia. Why can't we be friends? If I was president, I'd get elected on Friday. Assassinate. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand